Just a little thing on behalf of David Franks. He's had to slip out for a few minutes. He will be back and will carry on joining in with the meeting from there. But welcome to everybody and welcome to our presenters this evening. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Now, just going through some of the administration. The meeting this evening is supposed to be live streamed to the general public. We hope it will be, but there have been some technical difficulties, which is why you're not seeing the normal picture up on the screen, because normally at this point you'd be seeing a picture of me. So we hope that it will work okay. But we're going to have to wait and see. And the same thing applies to the video recording. We'll have to wait and see, I'm afraid. We have had people from Democratic Services trying to fix it, and we'll see how successful they've been later, I'm afraid. Right. So, do we have any exempt items on the meeting this evening?
There's none, Chair.
Thank you. Can you please remember, members, to switch your microphones on when speaking and speak directly into the microphone and switch off when you've finished? Officers joining using Teams will use the hands up icon to make questions and comments. And those officers should turn their camera and microphone on when speaking and off when finished. Can I ask that anybody turns their mobile phones onto silent mode or switches them off, please? Right, what's next then, Eunice? Okay, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Raja, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. You will, of course, be aware of the fact that ex-Councillor Gallagher is not with us tonight because of the by-election, as I'm sure you will realise. So that's why she isn't here this evening. Okay, next then. Okay, we have two sets of minutes. Need to just go through both of them just to make sure. We have the minutes of the 13th of June. Does anybody have any corrections or comments they wish to make about the minutes of the 13th of June? Those start at page 5 in your paperwork. Yes. Sorry, page?
Page 16, last paragraph. Should be Wardown Park. It says Warden Park. It should be Wardown Park.
That will be,
yeah. Yes, thank you. Next on to the second set of minutes of the 29th of July, which start on page 30.
I did have something else on. I did have something on that. I didn't realise we weren't going through page by page, so I have some other issues. I have some other issues on that first one. Yes, my apologies. I thought we were going through page by page. Yeah.
Chair. Yeah. Could I ask Councillor Stevens a bit closer to Mike, because some of us are hard of hearing.
Sorry, it wasn't on.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Right, sorry. Page 20, please. And it's the third paragraph up from the bottom.
Yeah.
And when will this festival survey report be reported back to committee? And will it include a profit and loss account to show how monies were allocated and used.
What Eunice is saying is that is actually a follow-up, and we will note that down as a question, and we will come back to members of the committee with an answer to your question,
Take that.
rather than it being a correction of the minutes.
My next point is page 23, top of page 23, and I'm very wary that we are going to lose the very important points that people have raised at that last meeting, when it says that the service director be requested to submit to a future meeting of the board. But is it going to take into account the various points made by the members? It says in resolved 1 that the update on progress of the Step Forward Luton Plan place brand be noted, and that comments made by members also be noted. So is there a list through you, Chair, to Eunice, of those members' comments that are going to be actioned?
I think, Chair, the follow-up resolution, which is the resolution number 2, actually picks that up. If you're referring to the reference to the festival survey report,
No,
other issues will be captured in future.
I mean, there are various issues. I mean, I raised about the objectives. What were the objectives about the campaign and its objectives? So what were the objectives? I asked, if you recall, if any training was being given to the ambassadors. So what kind of training was being given to the ambassadors? I believe that Councillor Hanif actually also raised a point when he said that they should reflect different sectors of the town for it to be a success. If I'm not incorrect, Councillor Hanif. And I also wanted to point out that ever since, in the very first information we were given about the Step Forward, I asked for the names of the ambassadors. They have never been forthcoming.
I'm sorry, Chair, by the way, the names of the ambassadors
Were they?
No. Actually, remember that forwarding it after that meeting took place, re-forwarding it the second time. So they were submitted, forwarded to members.
Okay, can I receive it again, because I don't recall it?
Pardon?
Can I receive them again, because I do not?
All right, okay.
Yes.
And certainly about the training and what the objectives are, because it's just.
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Stevens' point about the ambassadors, if he goes onto the website, Step Forward Luton website, the ambassadors are there with their bios.
Was the second set of minutes starting on page 30? Anybody got any comments or questions about those minutes? No? So can I take those minutes as being accepted? Okay, those minutes are accepted. Thank you. Okay, so there's one small update from me. I've been notified that from David Gertner that since his report was written, the airport sustainability report has moved location on the internet. and the address given on paragraph 5 is no longer correct. And that indeed I'd found, because when I tried to follow it, the link didn't work. So I have the new reference here for those of you that will need it. And can we issue that to members?
Yes, I'll pass that around to members.
You have given to all members. That's fine. Thank you. Right. Any urgent business?
No urgent business.
So, Chair,
Yes.
under agenda item number 4, I just want to declare that I am a board member of Luton Rising. If that,
Okay.
so
My feeling is that the nature of today's proceedings, I don't see any issue with you remaining, do you?
No decision has been made.
I think given the nature of the report that we've got, in fact, your input might well be very useful. So I don't see any objection.
thank you, Chair, but I just thought I'd be,
Yes,
transparent with that. And
quite right too. Thank you. Yes.
My understanding of the position is that the councillor does not need to declare an interest unless at any stage we get into a conversation about the financial affairs of London Luton Airport Limited, in which case he would need to.
Do you think that's fair, Councillor?
That's how it's always been.
Councillor?
That's how it's always
Yes.
been, Chair.
Yes. Yes, that's accepted. Thank you, David.
There are no references this time.
So in which case, then we're on to item 7, which begins at page 40 in your papers. So can I move on to that, which is the review of London Luton Airport Sustainability Report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, my name is David Gertler. I'm the planning consultant who has worked on behalf of the council for a number of years to do with applications and developments at Luton Airport. This is the 5th time that the what used to be called the annual monitoring report, but now is referred to as a sustainability report produced by the airport operator, has been to this committee. So this is the 5th year in a row. The first time Councillor Franks requested it at the consultative committee that it should come to the OSB, and so in 2020 that was the first time this report came. Since then, in 2022, we had the public inquiry into Luton Airport's proposed expansion to 19 million passengers, and in 2023, I suppose the big event that dominates 2023 in terms of the sustainability report, from my point of view, is that the Secretary of State granted planning permission for the increase to 19 million. It is on. Can you? It sounds quite echoey to me back here. So use this one as well. Are you sure? Can you hear? Yeah. Do you want me to move over to there? So in 2022, there was the public inquiry into the 19 million expansion, and in 2023, the Secretary of State granted planning permission subject to a legal agreement. And one of the conditions or clauses in the legal agreement is that the airport must produce a sustainability report, which covers all sorts of different aspects, some of which are specific to the legal agreement, and obviously others are up to the airport operator as to what they want to include and what they want to report on. And there are obligations as well on the council that we have to provide certain information to this report. When it comes to overview and scrutiny board, the recommendation that we put is that members consider the report, provide any feedback on it, and if there's ways to help or improve it in the future, then that would be useful to hear. So I'm going to probably jump around. So the report that I wrote is, as the chair said, on page 40 of the report. You will have seen on the committee agenda that there's an appendix to the report, which is the PowerPoint that's up on the screen at the moment. So I'm actually going to use that, and I will probably refer back to the report as I do that. So just to confirm, 90 million permission was granted subject to a legal agreement and various planning conditions. The legal agreement requires this sustainability report to be produced by the 30th of June each year. That report was produced and made available on the airport operator's website on I think it was the 28th of June. It's 100 and something pages long, which is it's actually 200 and something pages long, so it's quite in depth. About the last 50 or so pages of it are important tables which members could look at. If you go to the airport operators webpage, you will see that there are quarterly monitoring reports, and every quarter the airport operator produces reports which it takes to the consultative committee and to the noise and track subcommittee of covering various aspects like the number of passengers, the number of aircraft movements, the type of aircraft movements, track violations, those kind of things. So there are very detailed reports provided every quarter. This sustainability report is a summary of the year. And just to confirm, this is 2023 we're looking at. So although we're well through 2024, the information that we're considering is from 2023. I'll move on to the next one. In the airport sustainability report, they do give some highlights. And as I said, certain things are the airport singing its praises, like it's the 85th birthday in 2023. Item 2 on there was just to confirm that in 2022, they got the public inquiry happened, and the Secretary of State in 2023 granted permission. Then item 3, it's an award that the airport has received, and you'll see in the OSB report that's mentioned in paragraph 32 of the OSB report. The DART carrying 2 million passengers, that in its first 9 months, that's really impressive. It also massively helps with a mode shift to get passengers to move from private cars to public transport. It's very easy. I live in North London. I can hop straight on to the Thameslink and get to the airport and transfer direct to the DART and into the terminal. So those are just highlights. They are actually covered in different paragraphs in the OSB report, and we'll cover them a bit later as we go on. This is difficult for you to see, probably, but if you've got a printout of the appendix, the first table on the left-hand side is telling you about the different types of aircraft movements. There are 3 which are highlighted in yellow, and we will come on to those in a bit, but they are what are called the new generation, next generation aircraft. So they're the more fuel efficient and quieter aircraft, and Luton Airport has been leading the way for airports, even in Europe, to introduce the new generation aircraft. The second table on the right is information about the night quota, and it's just there for information. It will come up in a later page. It will be something that we look at, but it actually shows you that in terms of all the planning conditions that the Secretary of State imposed, which are carried forward from the original 2012 planning application, the airport has been operating within the planning conditions. So that is the total number of movements in the night period, what's called the quota count, where each aircraft is given a special identified quota in terms of noise. So they accord with that. And then the movements in the early morning shoulder period. The airport has met and complied with all the planning conditions there. The next 2 tables are are covered in the OSB report in paragraph 18 of the OSB report, and they relate to what are called track violations, where an aircraft may not follow the designated track that it should to come to the airport, and there are reasons why that might happen, and if those reasons aren't justified, so for instance if there's bad weather or if they've been told by air traffic control to use a slightly different route, those are acceptable violations going off track. But if they aren't acceptable, then they get fined, and the fines go to the Community Trust Fund. And then on the right-hand table, you will see noise violations, where aircraft are required to meet certain criteria. And if there are breaches of those noise levels, then the aircraft get fined, the airlines get fined, or the private airline air company gets fined. And that also goes to the Community Trust Fund. So this is the detail, really. And this would be seen in paragraphs 38 to paragraphs 48 of the report to OSB. You'll see that in 2023, the airport had 128,500 aircraft movements. So the reason 2019 is mentioned there is 2019 is the year that the airport got to its 18 million, what was the 18 million passenger cap. So in 2023, it wasn't up to that figure. But it was a 9% increase compared to 2022, the year before. The number of passengers carried were just over 16 million passengers. And again, that is an increase on 2022. It's obviously below the 18 million in 2019. It's a 23% increase on 2022, which is interesting given that the number of flights was only a 9% increase. So that can be down to a couple of factors, which the representatives from the airport could speak to if you have questions on that. Track performance is the same as previous years. The aircraft are keeping on track. 99.6% of that 128,500 movements are within track. The daytime and nighttime noise contour caps, there will be something later on that. They're all complied with. The expenditure on the noise insulation scheme is very high, £700,000. The airport in the previous legal agreement was only required to spend £100,000 a year on noise insulation. In 2022, they insulated 224 properties. That was much higher than previous years. And it was an expenditure of £700,000. So that is a considerable amount of money being spent there. You'll see that the complaints is actually slightly different in this table to what I've reported in paragraph 46 of the report to OSB. In paragraph 46, I say that there were 14,382 complaints in 2023, and that was nearly 20% down on the previous year, with nearly 13,000 of those coming from 10 individuals. The reason it's reported slightly differently in this table is because in 2022, there was one person who'd made over half the complaints. And at the Noise and Track Subcommittee, it was requested by Laddercan and the other third-party groups that one complainant be taken out of the records because it skewed everything. So in 2022, there were an additional 9,000 complaints from one person. So in reality, in 2023, the complaints are down because his complaints weren't reported to you last year because it had been agreed not to have those complaints. That person has actually left the area. So, but there are still 10 people responsible for 89% of the complaints. So again, you could say that skews things massively. So I'm just trying to get it to move. The next is about air quality. And the airport's air quality actually accords and is below standards set by the WHO and the standards set by the government. And partly the other is that you obviously haven't got what are called sensitive receptors very close to where the significant emissions are. So obviously where the drop-off zone is, there's more traffic and there's more emissions of nitrogen dioxide or particulate matters, PM 2.5 or PM 10s. But it is within the standards, below the standards set by the WHO. And so it reports there what those two different ones are. Interesting one is the airport number of employees in and associated with the airport has gone up significantly since I reported it last year for 2022. So the previous year it was 11,100, now it's 12,100. So the airport, as a influence on Luton, has seen more employees being attracted to the area, being taken on board. And it did look like to me, it looks like from the period of COVID, there were obviously a lot of furlough and things like that. The numbers went down to 10,000 something during the COVID pandemic, then went up to 11,100 for the two previous years, and then is up to 12,100 last year. In the sustainability report, there is a lot of information about the airport and how it works with the council on job fairs. It works with our employment team. It works with, I'm going to call it Job Centre Plus. I've probably got the wrong word, but it works to try and recruit people in the local area. It pays the real living wage, so it's a good employer from that point of view. I'm trying to remember, there was one other statistic about employment, which I haven't included on this report.
Local employment?
Local employment, yes, thank you. Local employment from the LU1 to LU7 is mentioned in my report.
63%.
Thank you. It's 63% of employees come from those 7 postcode districts. So the airport is very good at employing locally. It's also the same, very high in terms of the supply chain. And I think that's about 53% of the supply chain is from the local area, Luton and Bedfordshire. So this is a requirement in the protocol, which is part of the Section 106. It's been in place since 2012, and the airport is doing very well on achieving that. The last line on that table tells you there's £185,000 has gone through the Community Trust Fund to 23 different groups and reaches 13,000 people. The reality is, when you look at the sustainability report, you'll see there's probably, and in, I think it's paragraph 24 of the OSB report, gives you the variety of contributions that go out to different bodies, whether it's the 2 charities, the East Anglian Air Ambulance or the Luton Food Bank that the airport supports, or staff at the airport, as well as staff from neighbouring companies get involved in voluntary action. Then you've got the Community Trust Fund, the Green Futures Fund. In reality, there's probably about nearly £500,000 coming from donations from the airport to the wider community, the Luton community. My figures in paragraph 24 don't add up to that, but in the sustainability report, there is more information on that. So this one says what the key considerations are. Just to confirm, there have been no breach of the nighttime or daytime noise contours for the summer period in 2022. I should say 2023, sorry. Night flights are under the quota that has been set in the planning conditions. They're very close, so that is something that we will have to monitor with the airport. Early morning shoulder flights are at about 80% of the quota. And then the final things in there are just information about going forward. And so the 19 million planning permission had a number of conditions attached to it. Information for those have been submitted. So the airport in this year, so this will come up in next year's OSB, submitted the noise reduction strategy, an updated travel plan, and a carbon reduction strategy. Those will get reported to OSB next year. Unfortunately, the last bullet point on there, which says there's likely to be a decision by the Secretary of State in 2024 on the DCO, is no longer accurate, because the Department for Transport wrote to us to inform us that they're putting off a decision until possibly up to the 3rd of January 2025. So I was anticipating that we would get a decision this year. It was expected to be by the 4th of October, but it's now been put off. So there is much more detail in the OSB report, but I was rather assuming that members will have read that. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I personally have a number of points to make, but I'd prefer that members of the board got in first. So, David, you put your hand up first.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I've only got 4 questions, and it may well be that they're more suitably answered by members from the operating company, but I'll leave them to decide who provide the answers. 2 on the slide presentation then. Slide number 6 said, I'm sorry, this is just a simple typo, I'm sure. 16 million passengers used the airport during 2019. I'm pretty sure that should be 2023. It's just a simple typo. Yeah, fine. Thank you for that. On the following slide, there's a line that says, the airport again achieved real living wage accreditation. Are we to assume that relates only to the direct employees of the operating company? And if that is the case, do they have any information about the other employers on the site? Because there are quite a lot of them, aren't there? Employers, I mean.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair. Thank you. In regards to the real living wage, we don't have a whole and accurate assessment as to the proportion of all employees that are paid the real living wage. It absolutely does apply to the airport operator, and it is a requirement in our procurement process for new suppliers to become real living wage accredited. So it does go beyond the airport operator, but I can't give you a proportion at this time.
Thank you very much indeed. It's encouraging to note that it's an integral part of the contract between the airport operating company and the, I don't know, 150 odd other employers that operate from the site. Can I look then at paragraph 20 of David Gertler's report? It talks about air quality monitoring at various parts of the airport site. I wonder if they could give us a few words on air quality monitoring off-site, particularly under the flight path, for example.
Hello. So I can't give you the specific locations, but we do have a number of monitors at both ends of the runway that go out into the community, into to various roads and community villages and things like that. But I can't give you the actual. We do have them somewhere, but I don't have them to hand, the specific locations. But yes, there's 19, I believe, 19 all around the airport and on site as well.
Any information, please, about the readings you could get from the off-site monitoring?
I'm not quite sure where they're published. It's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure we can give you an answer around what they look like.
And just to add to Joshua's comments, so the air quality statistics are published via the DEFRA website, which you can link off from our website. And I'm pretty sure that we also report the air quality readings in other forums like the LAC committee, but I'm more than happy to follow up separately and provide that further information.
Councillor Franks, can I just ask you if you can pause just for a second? I will come back to you immediately, but Councillor Khan has to leave the meeting and has got a couple of questions. So if I may, I'll let him come in and then we'll go back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of burning questions. One, you talk about fining the aircrafts if they don't meet the standards. Could you tell us how many aircrafts have been fined already? Secondly, if I can just sort of, ask the question, then you can come back at once. Secondly, how do we currently compare with other airports when we're looking at, carbon emissions? And you talked about figures of employment, which are encouraging, they're going up. But in Luton, we do face a huge challenge of poverty. A lot of people are underpaid, and our ambition is to get them jobs which are better paid. Could you explain to us how many of people from Luton are in the executive positions or high paid jobs? What percentage is that? And lastly, about procurement. Again, we would like to see an increase in the procurement for various different supply chains. It'd be good to see what areas of procurement does Luton contribute to. Thank you.
Councillor, if I can start, paragraph 18 of the report to OSB, third bullet point down, says that there were 53 track violations out of a total of 128,000 movements. So that represents 0.04% of aircraft were caused track violations for which they were fined. That resulted in £75,000 of money which went to the Community Trust Fund. On noise violations, the fourth bullet point down in paragraph 18 says that there were 20 daytime noise violations and 7 nighttime noise violations. That resulted in £34,000 worth of fines, which also went to the Community Trust Fund. So that represents 0.02% of the total number of movements. So that's initially on track violations. What's the next?
Yes, so in relation to carbon emissions, it's hard to sort of draw comparisons directly from one airport to another because it all depends on the size of the airport and the scale of the operation. So, for example, Heathrow would contribute far many more emissions than, say, for London Luton Airport, for example. In terms of just giving you sort of a view on how well Luton Airport is performing, we're one of 3 airports to have achieved the highest level, which is level 4 of the Airport Carbon Accreditation Standard. And that recognises the work that we've not only done in reducing our own Scope 1 and 2 emissions, so they're the emissions that we as an operator produce, but also in working with our third parties to help them reduce their emissions. And David gave you the example that we're leading the way in having the latest, most modern aircraft types operate from Luton. And typically those aircraft are contributing 20% less emissions per movement. So we're doing a huge amount of work, both at our own emissions, but also of the third parties. And I think we've got a really good sustainability story that's beginning to emerge at Luton with the work we're doing around vehicles, renewable energy, and really just sort of transitioning to decarbonise the operation. In terms of jobs, I think you asked the question about what proportion of the team are in well-paid roles. So I'll take that in 2 halves. In terms of the 950 people employed by the operator, as we heard, 50% of those, or 51%, come from the LU1 to LU4 postcodes, and about 10% of those are in managerial roles. But I think it's just important to qualify, in a recent Oxford economics study that was part of the technical assessment for the growth application, there was an assessment of the average pay for someone employed at the airport. And I can't remember the specific percentage, but I think it was 18% higher than the national average. So in terms of jobs at the airport, they're typically well paid. And I'm, again, more than happy to supply that specific point from the report. I think they were the two on jobs and procurement. Can you just repeat the question on procurement, please?
In paragraph 36, Councillor, of the report, I summarise it to say, so we've already said there were 53% of the total spend comes into Luton. There's 70 million, that equated to 70 million pounds in the local area, 252 local businesses, and 44.7 million of that was spent in Luton and Bedfordshire. So you're looking at just under 40, just about 45 million in the local area.
Talking about?
There's a range of suppliers from the local area. One that springs to mind is Rybridge, which is construction. They have a construction contract with us. Maplebrook is another local construction company. Caterers as well, as you rightly say, hotels in the local area, and even down to our printers. Some of our local printers are based here in Luton.
Councillor, can I go back to you? Was your question directly related to the questions that were asked?
A couple of them.
Go with that, but then I want to get back to Councillor Franks, as I promised.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. What I was going to say, I mean, it's a really positive report, so well done. And it's really good to see the airport really starting to pick up and get to 90% of it. So well done to everybody, and well done on the sustainability. I am aware that Luton is being used as a case study nationally about how to grow as a sustainable airport. So congratulations on that. As well as that, I think there is room for improvement. And some of the questions I've got, while it's encouraging, you've got 63% in LU1 to LU7. I wonder if you've got the data for LU1 to LU4, because that's Luton. LU5 and LU6 is Dunstable, and LU7 is Leighton Buzzard. So given this is a Luton Borough Council asset, I'd like to know how much we're supporting our own residents in Luton. So I don't know if you've got that data.
51% fall in the LU1 to LU4 postcodes. So more than half of the workforce.
Good. Good to hear that, and I hope you've got ambitions to drive that further, so we can help our people locally. The other thing I was going to ask you, I read in your report that you are introducing ethnic diversity monitoring, but I didn't say when. I'd like to know when, because the aviation industry is notorious for a lack of diversity, both for gender, both for ethnicity. So I don't know when that's going to be introduced.
Well, I'm pleased to say that work is already underway, and many of your colleagues at both Luton Rising and through the consultative committee have raised the same point many times previously, and that exercise to gather the data is already underway.
So we can look forward into next year's report, seeing some data.
I very much hope so, yes.
Good. And then the last thing, I was just wondering, what are you actually doing as an airport operator, working with FE and HE to create a pathway for young people in Luton to actually get into the aviation industry? And I'm talking about the good jobs. I'm talking about ground crew, highly skilled ground crew, engineering, pilots, because again, I think pilots, I mean, only 2% of pilots are from an ethnic diversity background.
Yeah, great question, actually. And we did a lot of work last year. So we took some time last year to review our programme of works on that area. We had one previously to the pandemic, but we wanted to make sure that it was up to date and for the time that we currently live in. So we did a big refresh last year on all of our skills, education and employment and pathways into the airport. So this year we've started a number of those programs to support and work with schools. So we did a lot of work with some schools this year, and we're working with some industry recognised partners to deliver those entries into work, and we're also looking to work with other third parties like EasyJet, TUI, and other airport companies to sort of join them together, really, so that all the different jobs are available.
That's pleasing to hear. And again, the next question is about apprenticeships, and I don't know, in terms of the airport operator and what you can do to then leverage that onto some of your employers to start using apprenticeships to kind of get young people from Luton into the aviation industry.
I was just going to note to say that that there's again, conjoined to that piece of work, there is a big piece of work with our HR team who are working to introduce apprenticeships directly for the airport company itself. But there are also some large employers like TUI and EasyJet who run some fantastic apprenticeship programs with some real big numbers. But yeah, there's always work to do, and we are looking to connect with both EasyJet and TUI more closely to understand how we can involve ourselves more closely with those pieces of work.
Thank you. Can I go back to Councillor Franks as promised?
Yep, thank you, Chair. I've only got one more question. I'm pretty sure the answer is in the full report, but since it's 108 pages and I haven't had time to read every single word, we've been told we're talking here about aircraft movements. We've been told in previous years that about 70% of the aircraft movements are in a westerly direction. I'd just be good to know whether that is still the case, please.
Yep, so it's average 70% every year, so 70% in a westerly direction, 30% in an easterly direction. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Councillor Stevens.
Franks has just finished, actually, because I was looking at a recommendation actually from Nicole, some of your departure and arrival analysis. And it seems to indicate that the easterly side is actually about 25%, not 30%. That's the first thing. I'd like to know what happened in May 24, when it seemed to be that most of the aircraft, sorry, not most, but a slight majority of the aircraft were both arriving and departing in the easterly side. So, for example, the daytime easterly was 1,396. The nighttime 217. That was easterly, and on the westerly it's 1,291 and 180 in the evening. That was the departure. On the arrivals, it 2,706 easterly, 2,480 was on the westerly. So, are we to take it that there was a month of basically wind that was, and the planes were flying into the wind that was coming on an easterly direction?
Yeah, so it does change on a monthly basis. It's probably worthwhile sharing with everyone else where that data has come from, because it's not in this sustainability report. It's part of our quarterly monitoring report. So that's tables 2.1 for the departures and 3.1 for the arrivals, which is where you've seen the May data from. It does change on a monthly basis. April and May, we do have a large proportion of easterly winds, the same as November. So it does change throughout the year. And that's exactly right. It's due to the wind direction.
Yeah, I mean, as you know full well, that a lot of complaints are coming from people who are living under the westerly takeoff and arrival, and there have been questions. I think I gave a piece of casework to you from one resident who asked why could we not have a fairer share. So the question might be, what happens when there's no wind?
So it's based on a number of different factors. So there's ground level winds that we look at as the first thing, and then there's winds at altitude, so at 3,000 feet. If there's winds there, we'll go with that one. And then if there's definitely no wind or a crosswind at both of those, we'll link in with the other London airports if any of those have got a strong wind direction, because it just helps the whole system of London airports if we're all operating on the same direction.
My next point is, and I suppose it will become more important if the expansion is given the go-ahead, but looking at the NPR route, there's been noticeable.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Stevens, but are we just looking at the report for 2023
Yes,
and
we are. We're looking at
not speculating on what's
looking
happening in the future?
Thank you, Councillor Hannon.
But-
We're looking
but-
very much at what's in.
But I think we were just here to debate
we're
what's in the
looking
report.
very much what is in the report, because it's talking about track violations here. You yourself, Nicole, actually picked up the fact from a number of residents who complained that, and I think it's picked up in your figures, that that there have been a lot of flights that have not been doing their turn when they've reached 1,030 feet. And this has caused a lot more noise for residents, especially in Cudenhoe Road. And I'd like to know whether those are picked up in the fines, both for 2023 and for 2022. So are we retrospectively looking back to see the violations that have taken place?
Sorry, Chair, can I
We
just ask
stop
Councillor?
at this
Sorry,
point
can we just
to get
ask
a response?
So where's Councillor Stevens getting this data
Just
from?
1 second.
Sorry. So can we just ask Councillor Stevens where he's getting this data from? Because surely we should be discussing what's in front of us and
I'm
not.
discussing. I'm talking about.
But what
about
this?
the
Well, you
track
just mentioned. Where's that data
I'm
from?
talking about the track violations.
Can
I have
you-
a perfect right to ask those questions.
Councillor Stevens, can you point out to members of the board where it is you're looking in the report, please?
I'm looking at the point. I'm looking at the 53 track violations, and I'm asking whether in the recent data, because we've got 2024 data in front of us, in the recent data, and also the data from last year, whether it included those planes that were not doing the 1,030 feet, doing their first turn, and whether those have been picked up as part of the fines.
Yep. So when they don't turn at 1,030 feet, they do still stay within the corridor. And we are still looking at the analysis. So I've not said so far that most of them aren't. Most of them are doing the turn at 1,030 feet, remaining within the corridor. So it's only those aircraft that are going outside of that corridor that get fined.
Okay.
Councillor Hussain, can I get your point that you're trying to make,
Yeah.
please?
I was saying point of order in a sense that one needs to get to the facts rather than the assumption what is, what isn't. And if it is the breaches, then the breaches need to, if it's in this report, or are you saying that these breaches are not fact, that you know better than probably what's in the report? I'd like to know where is that information you were quoted from, that there were more breaches than what is being said in the report.
Has come from the operating company themselves.
It's not in this report, so we are completely ignorant of what you know, and where is it here? I haven't seen it.
Yes. Can I take the points over there?
Point of order, Chair. Could we ask the members on the opposite bench to just show a bit of respect to decorum, because we should conduct our debate with respect. Thank you.
I didn't think we were conducting it without respect, to be honest. But
on my part, sorry, Chair, that was taken.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I just find it hard to follow Councillor Stevens. I guess he's maybe been talking to the 10 people that account for 89% of our complaints, because a lot of what he's saying is hearsay. It's not backed up by factual. I don't know how you can judge a plane not turning at 33 is making more noise when you've got noise monitors there, and we're looking at a report looking at 2023.
Chair, I haven't finished my question. Can I suggest then that maybe we can ask the operating company to share that extra data to the councillors so that they're fully briefed?
I think it's probably worth just summarising our conversation so far, Councillor Stevens, because you and I have spoken quite a lot about this issue. So I've been out to the residents as well. There is an opinion of residents that the aircraft are not turning at 1,030 feet, and we've committed to go away and do some analysis. We're still conducting that analysis, and then I'll share that with Councillor Stevens and the residents. And if this committee would like to see that as well, I'm more than happy to share that.
Helpful, Chair.
Yes, it would.
Can I move on to a different point, please? And that is really picking up what Councillor Abbas said, try and be helpful. It would be very useful, picking up your point about pilots, whether there could be some additional work to take place with the University of Bedfordshire to see whether it's possible. They offer an aviation degree, but not an aviation degree with pilot training. And it might be useful to have some discussion to see whether that kind of program could be designed together with the university.
Sorry, could I just add to Councillor Stevens' question? So my son actually done airport and aviation management at the University of Bedfordshire. And I have in the past asked the university about increasing recruitment of the students from the borough. So to follow on Councillor Stevens' very good question about what work could you do or have you done to encourage more applicants, especially from the borough? We got a lot of aspirational pilots, and we try to encourage the airport as a teaching, as a potential workplace. So what work has been done or is planned to be done?
So just to add to that point and the point that we were making earlier about sort of skills and apprenticeships, it's part of the whole package of review, I suppose. So I suppose last year focused on a lot of the early school and secondary school years, and we're sort of working our way up. So kind of getting to apprenticeships, and we get into interns, and then you would have seen in the news, we've just obviously solidified our partnership with Cranfield University. We would most likely probably want to do something similar with the Uni of Beds. We do work with the Uni of Beds on a number of things and have had multiple conversations, but I suppose it's just about finding that thing. But 100%, I think that's the next part of our overall sort of skills plan, is to create that higher education pathway as far as we've been doing it from younger years and things like that. So it's something we're looking into, definitely.
Chair. And in the school I work at, earlier this year, Thompson or TUI came in, and they had lots of excellent literature about apprenticeships that they were offering for young people. So I think there is scope, especially with Barnfield College and the university, to work with the other companies that are based at the airport. I even had a student many years ago that did work experience at Signature. He was a year 11 student. So we're happy to work with you to help more young people work at the airport.
Definitely. I think you've highlighted the point there. There's probably some lacking around materials for schools, and it's actually part of a piece of work we're working on about how can we actually give students some insight into the airport that's on their doorstep if they don't know that it's there. And also, I actually do have a conversation with Barnfield College on Friday, so you'll be happy to hear that we're looking into it as we speak.
Can I indulge myself just for a moment as chair and just ask a couple of questions, and then I'll go back to Councillor Stevens, who I know wants to ask some more. If I can just refer to page 41 of the report that's in front of you, which is talking about carbon emissions. My concern there is that as airport operator, you're quite rightly looking at your own net zero by 2040, but that only represents, you say, 0.5% of the total emissions of the airport. So my question, what's the point?
Well, I think it's absolutely critical to lead by example, and however great or small in comparison to others, we've got a really important job to do to demonstrate that we're absolutely committed to playing our part in decarbonising our operations. So I think it's fundamental. And I'm seeing the benefit of that because, as we've already touched on a few times now, we're leading the way with the work we're doing with our airline partners to ensure the most modern, less polluting aircraft are operating from Luton rather than other bases. We've worked tirelessly with the rail operators to bring about express connectivity that plugs into the electric DART system. So now you can get from London and beyond to the airport without any need to jump on a diesel train. So, the work starts at our own front door and goes all the way through to our partners, and we're making really good inroads there.
I understand that. Moving on to that, as you've mentioned it, the DART, I see on paragraph 15 of the report, it says DART in its first 9 months of operation was responsible for transporting over 2 million passengers. How does that compare with the number of passengers used to go on the bendy bus?
So we're seeing, well, there's two aspects to this. The first point to say is during COVID, people became more and more reluctant to use public transport. So we did see an immediate dip immediately after COVID in terms of people's reluctance to use public transport. But as you've just highlighted, we're now seeing that people using DART is exceeding the number of people that were using the bendy bus. And we've actually seen that now continually going upwards. So it's going in the right direction and it's growing. And I think to sort of reel off some figures, I think pre-DART, we were about 16% rail mode share, and I think we're nearer 20% now, and it's going up.
Yeah. And then a final one from me, which is you're talking about and made a big emphasis in the report, David did when he was presenting it, about the number of complaints. Speaking personally, as somebody who anecdotally, just me personally, I find there is increased aircraft noise at the moment from the airport, from where I live, which is in Wigmore. I suppose my real question is can we have a simple email way of reporting the noise? Because personally, I've given up complaining about the noise because it's too much effort. And I suspect a lot of our residents feel the same. So can we have a simple email? Because I don't think there is one. At least if there is, it's missing from me.
Yeah, there's actually three ways to make a complaint. We have a telephone number, we have an email address, and there's the online Travis system. We do encourage people to use the online Travis system. Would you like the email address now? Do you want me to? It's noise.inquiries@ltn.aero is the email address for noise.
That's what I tried the other day and it bounced.
Okay. I'll have a look into it. It was definitely working over the weekend because we've received some this morning. Okay. So
and address is
noise.inquiries
at
ltn.aero.
Dot
aero AERO.
Yeah, that's what I tried. My emails bounce.
Okay.
So maybe it was just me, but
that you would get an automatic response from it once we've registered it. So you'd get we've got your email. So
didn't
okay.
Get that far.
That's fine. I'll have a link into it. We did definitely get some over the weekend. So I'll double check this.
I'll try again. Yes, Councillor Stevens.
Chair, thank you. Can I find out how many properties still are in the system to have the noise installation? Has the budget run out for this year, or is there a further budget? And it's a very important question because if the expansion, it's 50-50 whether it now go ahead or not. But if the airport expansion does go ahead, is it the intention of the operating company to carry on to finish insulating those properties, or is that going to be passed across to Luton Rising to have to step in and to do the insulation?
This is actually moving on to the DCO, but it was a big matter of discussion during the examination. There is currently a noise management plan for the airport operator. The mechanism that Luton Rising are proposing for noise insulation scheme is more comprehensive even than the current scheme. So the airport's scheme that was approved by the Secretary of State in 2023, which has seen this significant increase in money going out to insulate properties, it is going to cover an even bigger area, even lower in terms of the noise thresholds. There are a number of different criteria, but that is for the DCO, and that won't even be reported in next year's sustainability report, because we don't anticipate now a DCO decision until 2025.
Councillor, can we please, can we make sure that we stay on issues to do with the report rather than future plans, please? I want us to make sure we concentrate on the report.
An issue to do with that.
Sorry?
The issue to do with that is whether this scheme is going to continue, even if we talk about the number of insulated properties. If there's still a large number in the system, is that budget going to have to move across to the Borough Council and Luton Rising, where we're already having to try and save money and find money? So there was a perfectly insensible rationale for my question.
Can we answer that question or not?
Yeah, just to again clarify. So when the 19 million permission was granted by the Secretary of State, there was an existing noise insulation scheme for the airport operator. Until the airport operator served its notice of intention to implement the Secretary of State's decision, that noise insulation scheme carried on operating, although the airport operator was throwing more money into it already. Then the Secretary of State's decision came out. This year, the airport operator told us that they intended to implement the 19 million permission. So now the new noise insulation scheme for the airport operator applies. With the DCO, it would be the same. If the DCO serves notice saying that they intend to implement, then their scheme will take over at that point.
Colleagues will probably remember that we supported a motion that went through full council, that was supported by all sides. And one part of that motion asked whether there could be additional permanent noise monitors, especially in Southwold and maybe in the east. The answer came back to the chief executive that it's not required by regulation. But if the operating company is to be a good partner to the Borough Council, can we not go back and look at that to see whether we can have additional noise monitors, both in Southwold and in the east, so that we can actually really find out what the residents are feeling?
So there's two types of noise monitors that we have at the airport. One of the types is the fixed ones, and they're a regulatory distance. They're 6.5 kilometres from the airport. We've got one to the east of the airport that they fly directly over, and then there's a gateway to the southwest of the airport, which they fly between. So they're the regulatory fixed noise monitors. Then we have a further 7 portable noise monitors that we move around. So that has been in South Luton, and we spread them out, and so it's fair for everyone across the areas that we overfly.
With respect, that wasn't my question. My question was for a permanent noise additional. I realise that the operating company is following regulations, but this is something that the councillors in their motion accepted and put forward as a request to the operating company. And it came back, since it's not required by regulation, you weren't going to do something. Yes, it was a request by your partner, the Luton Borough Council, that you look at this implementation.
I do apologise, but we're just simply not aware of the detail on this motion. So can I ask, and I'm not aware whether you're referring to the Chief Exec of London Luton Airport Operations Limited, or the Chief Exec of London Luton Limited, or the Chief Exec of the Council. So can I perhaps ask for some further clarity, perhaps share the motion with us, and then we can perhaps pick this up in the relevant forum, like the Noise and Track Committee?
We will ensure that happens, and we'll pass the motion forward.
Thank you kindly.
My very last point, which is partly connected to that motion, but my very last point is acknowledging the fact that we're doing well on new quieter, less polluting planes. However, we are working towards 2040. So are we able to bring in a deadline by which planes that are using London Luton Airport prior to 2040 would have to be of the quieter, less polluting variety? That seemed to make sense about helping us to meet our 2040 zero emissions. So have you set a deadline by when that will have to have taken place?
Sorry, Councillor, just in terms of noise, there is a planning condition in the 19 million planning permission, which requires noise levels to go down by a certain amount. So this is the noise contours, the summer noise contours. So there was a variation to the conditions. So 2028 and 2031 are key dates for noise contour areas to come down. A noise reduction strategy was submitted by the airport operator this year, so that will appear in next year's sustainability report. That's noise. One of the key means of getting the noise contours down is the quieter aircraft. One of the paragraphs in this OSB report talks about an incentivization scheme for the airport operator uses for the airlines to encourage them to upgrade, renew their fleet. But most of the airlines, so I think Wizz Air are talking about having only NEOs, the new engine options, by 2027, I think it is. So Wizz obviously it makes up a very large percentage. I can't remember if it's 34% at the moment of flights at Luton. So they will have those. EasyJet update their fleets. I can't speak for the airport operator on this, but I don't believe that the airport operator can actually dictate to they can't dictate to the airlines that they have to have certain new engine option aircraft, but they can incentivize them. It's because you've got a whole UK market, and you can't have one airport to dictating something like that. So they have encouraged, they have incentivized, and as a result, Luton Airport is seeing a lot more and a quicker move to the quieter aircraft and the more efficient aircraft.
I started off saying it was encouraging to see how well we're doing, but it didn't answer my question, or did it answer my question that you have no authority to put in that kind of regulation? Can I get a guarantee that that is the answer? That you cannot mandate?
I don't believe that the airport can mandate.
That's not a firm answer.
I understood that what we were just told was that the airport operator cannot mandate to the airlines what aircraft they will use. And unless I've misunderstood the answer, that's what I think I heard.
Yeah, and that's under the UK airport slot regulations is where that's upheld.
Can I suggest that at this point, I think we've gone round the loop. Yes, Councillor.
I just want to say on the motion, if we could please circulate it to the whole of the OSB, because I'm not aware of that motion saying there was going to be noise monitors in Southwold. I recall maybe it was increased noise monitoring to do with the DCO, but I'm not quite sure. So if you could circulate that to everybody, that will clarify everything. And it's looking fairly obvious that Councillor Stevens is not in favour of the airport and expanding.
I understand.
I didn't say I wasn't. I'm in favour of responsible expansion, and with the emphasis on responsibility.
Excuse me. I want to bring us back to the report, please. I think that the report has been extremely valuable. You can see the discussion that it's generated. I personally would like to thank you for doing the report. I know that it's an obligation, but it doesn't make it any the less useful for that. Can I, though, just add one additional comment, and this is only really for information for the members here. You may or may not be aware, all of the members here of OSB, that in respect of aircraft noise, we did have an email go out at about midday today about an airport and noise week from the 14th to the 17th of October. Can I urge you all to look at the sessions which are in that report, because it gives an opportunity for further discussion. I would also ask, if I may, from the airport operator, that the 8 sessions that I've seen on there, can we please have an expansion of what each of those will cover, because that's by no means clear to me as to what they would cover, so I wouldn't know which ones I wanted to most get involved with. So could I ask for a slight expansion, please? But I'm very grateful to see that that is happening as a series of events in that period. And I'd encourage people to have a look carefully. So thank you very much for the report. I hope that I can get an expansion of those items.
Yes, definitely. So Airspace and Noise Week is one of our new initiatives, and it's aimed at everyone really. And then we've got the 8 sessions throughout the week. So far they've been quite popular. We only set them up today and advertise them today, and there's some which are getting quite full. So I would encourage you all to kind of attend them if you can. And yeah, absolutely, I'll get those expanded so that everyone can understand what they are. But we've got air traffic controllers, pilots, Bedfordshire and Luton Community Trust Fund doing a presentation, noise insulation scheme, and we've got a South Luton specific one as well. So
should be pleased to note that I'd clocked the fact that it was happening, and so by the nods at some of the other members of this board. So thank you very much for taking that initiative. If we can have that expanded detail so we can see which bits we want to come and invade you on, that would be helpful. But thank you very much indeed for the report. I know that there are still outstanding questions and queries people have got, but nonetheless, I think the report was extremely useful. I know it meets the statutory requirements, but it's much more than that. Thank you for presenting it to us today. Sorry, Councillor.
The point of clarification is in terms of the noise and in terms of the insulation. If I remember it right, David is the one that probably knows. The members had put a condition in the first, when there was an increase in the numbers, that the people immediately under the fly path would ought to be given some sort of priority, because they are the one that suffered the most. And that was the residents of Farley and the South Ward, and it was one of the conditions that I did insist, and it was put in the planning condition in this chamber.
The a consultative committee has a subgroup that sits down and looks at which properties have been approached. I can't remember now, Nicole, if nearly all the properties who were entitled have been approached. That there's been something like 1,850 properties have been approached under the noise insulation scheme. Some decline, but then later on, within say 5 years, they can come back and say, but the noise and I can't remember what the subgroup's called. But the noise insulation subgroup of the consultative committee does sit there at the beginning of the year, and each quarter they allocate. And if some properties from the previous year haven't been done, then they get pulled forward for that.
Yeah, it'd be useful if you can send us the information to the members, so at least those residents that we represent, in particularly in Farley and South Ward, were immediately under the fly path, do know that they are not forgotten. As much as they support the airport and appreciate, and support the majority of the people that I represent in Farley support the growth of the airport. But they would, at the same time, ought to be treated just as well as we are on our near neighbours.
My apologies for not having picked up your request to speak.
Chair, it just occurs to me that we haven't actually introduced ourselves, and I don't know whether you require that for the record of who we all are.
Yes, please do.
So I'll let the team introduce themselves. I'm Neil Bradford, Head of Communications.
Oliver Jaycock, Director of Corporate Affairs.
I'm Nicole Pryor and I'm Head of Flight Operations.
Joshua Keating, Community and CSR Executive.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. We now have just one final item to go, which is the programme of work for OSB, yes? Over to you then, Eunice. You abandoning the programme of work, Councillor? Okay. Answer is yes, it is abandoned.
Chair, the work program is as presented. I don't really have any new items added.
Inputs on programme of work. Any proposals for new items to be added to the programme of work?
Um, 2nd of December meeting that after the discussions
That's page 58.
After the discussions with the operating company about apprenticeships, it would be quite useful to have what the work that they're doing fed into the apprenticeship strategy that is there as the first item on that for that agenda.
So to get the airport input about apprenticeship.
Are you referring to the 21st of October meeting date, but the executive meeting is on the 2nd of December? On page 58.
Yes, that's the
page 58, the apprenticeships, I think.
Involved in also to be, because the idea was to put the strategy together, have all the different pots, if you like, of apprenticeships coming into that strategy document.
Eunice and I will approach them to see what they can offer.
Okay.
Don't worry. Any more inputs? Yes, David.
I have emailed you this evening, Chair, a news item about Merton Council seizing rogue landlord rented houses. And I think it would be useful if we could have a report explaining what powers Merton Council used and whether they're available to Luton.
Thank you. I'll have a look at that. I'll have a look at that later and we'll report back to members. Yeah. Yes, we'll have a look at it later. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor.
I was wondering, is it possible to, at some point, get an update from the Luton Town Football Club in terms of the new site and what's happening?
Do you want that just in respect of the football club, or do you want that in respect of the whole of that development on that site?
I think.
Power Court.
Yeah, the Power Court development.
I would have thought that I understand what you're asking. I'm just saying, do you want football club or do you want Power Court and what's happening on the site as a whole?
I think the whole development would be, I don't know what other members think, but I think the whole development, an update on what's happening. Would that be possible?
Pick that up and see.
I can have the conversation with officers and see. I think that's a weird one because I'm thinking.
Can
I
I
don't
just?
know. I think I'll speak with the head of planning to get.
I think there may be some conflict here. We because they've just put in detailed planning permission for Power Court. I'm not sure discussing that while that planning permission is going through makes sense.
Well, what I'm suggesting is not straight away, because I know that there is something going through to development management. But later on, sort of early next year, later on in the year when that's gone through, maybe an update.
I'm quite happy to discuss that as a possibility with the head of planning, and let's see what his advice would be. But I understand the principle. We've been seeing things about the proposals for what the new stadium would look like and so on. I personally would like to see, if we do discuss anything, the wider thing to do with Power Court rather than just the football stadium, because it's such a large piece of development. But I'm happy to discuss that separately with Sonu.
Right, thank you.
Okay, any more? No? Okay, well, thank you very much.